Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And an amazing thing has just happened. Humza Yousaf has opened his mouth, and the words that came tumbling out were both honest and accurate. I know, scary, isn't it? It's not often that we associate words coming from his mouth with those two adjectives. And yet, there you have it. He was both honest and accurate. He's saying that the civil war in the SNP is destroying the party and that it's not looking good. And it shouldn't continue, he's saying. But it's impossible to sugarcoat it any other way, to use his term. We'll take a look at this article and see what's going on and why has he suddenly realised what the rest of us have known for a long time. Here goes. So, SNP leadership frontrunner Humza Yousaf admits it is impossible to sugarcoat the party's punishing civil war as candidates clash at the hustings in Glasgow. Humza Yousaf said that the last 72 hours in particular had been extremely difficult. And this came 24 hours after the SNP president, Mr Russell, said all things had gone wrong. The three candidates rowed over tax policies and the declining SNP membership. I don't see how they can, argue over that. It's without doubt that it's declining, unless they're arguing about why it's declining. But we know why, don't we? Gender is the main one. And then the sort of perceived, I've got to say it carefully, the perceived dishonesty that's going on in the upper echelons of the SNP. Of which, of course, Humza is a very close compatriot, or at least until recently. Less so now. Anyway, Humza Yousaf last night admitted it was impossible to sugarcoat just how punishing the civil war splitting the SNP has become. The leadership candidate said the previous 72 hours in particular had been extremely difficult, and the damaged party needed a refresh. So he's admitting it needs to be refreshed, i.e. not more of the same. So he's actually saying that he shouldn't, as a continuation candidate, stand. That's effectively what he's saying. It's not obviously what he means, but they are the words that come out of his mouth, because he never really thinks about things before opening the beak and letting it tumble out. Anyway, this came just 24 hours after the SNP president, Mike Russell, admitted that things had gone spectacularly wrong and the party was in a tremendous mess. Things have been going spectacularly wrong for maybe 15 years. The divisions were on full display in the latest clashes between the three leadership candidates at a hustings in Glasgow last night. Ash Regan, Kate Forbes and Mr Yousaf rowed over tax policies and the disastrous slump in the SNP membership at the event hosted by the radio station LBC. She's looking very forthright there. I've got to tell you, and I shouldn't, because I don't want. My wife is not a personality. She doesn't do YouTube or anything like that. But my wife is not too dissimilar in looks with Kate Forbes, and so I do kind of have a bit of a soft spot for Forbie because she reminds me a lot of my wife. Although when I get a look like that from my wife, I also know that I am in deep, deep trouble. Thankfully, it's not too often. But anyway, Miss Regan lashed out at her rivals who had ridiculed her calls for an overhaul of the party. She also suggested Nicola Sturgeon's hated gender reforms were to blame for the hemorrhaging membership. And the former minister said the chaos reflected her warnings about the culture within the SNP, and she claimed she was the only hope for the party at this juncture. She is no hope. Ash Regan is definitely not going to win it. She can offer nothing. Every time she was questioned, she has to root around in her mind looking for the answers that should be at her fingertips. She cannot answer a question with immediate, confident answers, and that is not the signs of a leader. A leader should be able to know everything, have that information there, and communicate it quickly and efficiently in a manner that people can understand. She sort of ums and ahs and ifs and buts and has obviously no idea what she is talking about. But I think she's the only one who stands to have a job should Kate Forbes become leader, which of course we suspect will be the case. Anyway, SNP bosses caved to pressure last week to end their secrecy over membership numbers and revealed more than 50,000 had deserted since 2019, with a plunge of around 30,000 since last December. It was 32,000 in fact, meaning that 72,186 people are eligible to vote in the contest to succeed Ms Sturgeon, and we wonder how many votes will actually be cast. If it's fewer than 72,000, That's a good start. But even then, every single vote will still need to be checked to make sure it wasn't one of those 6,000 extra ballots that went out to ex-members or people sometimes who were never members. It's possible. Anyway, front runner Mr. Yousaf insisted he would get in amongst the weeds and understand why we lost those members. Well, you were undoubtedly one of the causes. You have failed spectacularly in everything you've done. So if you want to look at a reason why people are leaving, I suggest you purchase a mirror. But it would have to be a bit of a wide one because you've got a massive head for someone who's achieved so little. Miss Regan argued that the decline was likely driven by a lack of perceived progress on the independence question and also the gender recognition reform. It's undoubtedly the Gender Recognition Act. Very less likely the independence question because you've never had independence in the nearly 90 years that the party's existed. So why should they suddenly start leaving in droves now? No, it was undoubtedly that and the perceived machinations and, shall we say, financial inveiglement that is undoubtedly going on, regardless of who is to blame, which it certainly isn't Peter Murrell, the most honest man in Scotland. Definitely not him. He has nothing to do with it. Just ignore the 3 police investigations. The belated release of the figures exposed the rapid membership decline, but also proved the catalyst for 2 high-profile resignations within the party machine, which we've talked about, Murray Foote and Peter Murrell, both leaving within a couple of days of each other over the fact that they, more Murrell providing the lying information rather than Mr. Foote promulgating that information. That was down to undoubtedly down to Peter Murrell. But we also lost Liz Floyd, the First Minister's senior advisor. Big spad. She walked. But she said she was always going to, and she probably was always going to once Sturgeon had gone. But leaving early like that is kind of the icing on the cake. It's kind of a further sort of ridicule and embarrassment for the outgoing evil regime of misery and poverty. At last night's debate, Ms Regan said the events over the last weekend have borne out some of the points that I've been making over the last couple of weeks. I'm the only candidate that started off saying I wanted a fresh direction because I thought we had issues in the party. No, she's not the only one. Kate Forbes also said that it needs massive change. But she has to push her own boat, I suppose. No one else is pushing her boat, let's be honest. We can see through the events over the weekend with the very high-profile resignations in the party that things are not fine. No, the way things were are definitely not fine and they definitely need to change, which is why Humza and his more of the same is not really going to cut it. And I think even the SNP members now see that continuation is a continuation of failure. Reiterating her call for SNP members to be able to change their vote in the leadership contest following the chaotic past week, she suggested that there was a significant amount of voter regret out there amongst those who'd backed Mr Yousaf as the continuity candidate. There's a lot of regret from anyone who's ever put their ex in the SNP box at the moment, I would suggest. The Health Secretary responded, "We absolutely need to refresh, reframe and re-energise, which is why he's got no chance. This has to happen regardless of who becomes the SNP leader. Yes, the last 72 hours in particular," he said, "have been incredibly difficult for the party. Let's not sugarcoat it." But, this is it. So he's admitting that the party is falling apart. They all 3 say they need change. They've all said the party needs to change. And yet he is standing as a candidate saying more of the same. And that, I'm afraid, is why he is unlikely to get it. I have a source. Let's just say he is SNP adjunct. I'm not going to say who or what he is or what he does, but he provided some bona fides for me and gave me the information. He said, do not mention where it came from, and I'm not. It's just simply a source. And he said that the numbers aren't there for Humza Yousaf, and it's likely Kate Forbes is your new leader. But anyway, I shall finish there. Round off this section, I'll come up and then we'll finish the video. It is without doubt time for change. Not just a change of leadership, but a change of the hierarchy of the party, of the entire mechanism, of the upper echelons of who runs this party and ultimately the country of Scotland whilst they are in power. And Kate Forbes Does she have the ability, if she becomes, the leader of the SNP and the First Minister of Scotland, does she have the character, does she have the force of personality to force change at that level? You want to think that she does. She really needs to, because otherwise she won't be First Minister for long. She won't be the leader of the SNP after the next election. If Humza gets it, there'll be no change whatsoever, and they will demolish themselves, which is no bad thing. And of course, Ash Regan, well, she's out of it. She's got no chance whatsoever. So it will be interesting. We're Tuesday today. We're 6 days away from finding out which of the glittery turds will take the prize. And we don't really care which one, because as long as somebody fails, then they need to fail hard, and then they're out at the next election. And hopefully then the adults in the room can fix it. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I'm going to stop there. If you like what you see and hear on the channel, do please hit that subscribe button. That would be marvellous. Ring the bell for notifications of future output. Leave a like, leave a comment. Please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, never believe them unless they're telling you the truth, which very rarely happens, and goodbye.